Hi, my name is Paul Alexander.
Hi, my name is Jordan Brownmore.
What we're going to talk about today is tackling bias in financial services. So we're going to talk about bias in financial services, but how does bias creep into your business and what can you do to fix it? Recent events with Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement and all sorts of other movements have really highlighted publicly the extent to which diversity and inclusion are still part of everyday life. So what's often less understood is how systemic and pervasive the issue can be without us even knowing. So we often think about diversity and inclusion in terms of ethnicity, race, gender, and age, but it covers a multitude of different areas: parental status, disability, sexual orientation, values, religion, education, location, physical qualities, and marital status. And artificial intelligence has the potential to create a much fairer society, but misunderstood, it can unwittingly increase discrimination rather than eliminate it. So in terms of fairer society, in many cases, AI can reduce human subjective interpretation of data. Subjectivity goes away because machine learning algorithms learn to consider only the variables that improve their predictive accuracy based on the training data used. But models may be trained on data containing human decisions or on data that reflects second-order effects of societal or historical inequities. So it can actually be used erroneously to increase discrimination. So how does bias creep into your business and what can you do to fix it?
So there's many places that bias can creep into your business, especially in the financial services sector. Not only do you have recruiting and who you recruit and how, you also have the regulatory presence. You also have marketing, which is who you market to, who you target to, and how your messaging is. But you, of course, have your financial products, which can and sometimes is particularly tailored to specific types of people. And of course, partnerships. So who are you working with closely? Where are you committed? And how exactly does that fit with the overall society and discrimination and bias? And so all of these parts are in themselves have potential of being biased or discriminatory, but combined can create a bigger and, like Paul was referring to, a more unfair society possibly. So in this instance, reducing accessibility with bias, it was found that there was a gender bias between male executives and female executives. So in this particular case, there was a 5% more likely chance of receiving approved loans if you were a male executive than if you were a female executive. And further on, when females got accepted for loans, they had on average a 0.5% chance of having, or a 0.5% higher interest rates. Further on, there's also extreme blindness bias in a lot of financial services and regulatory work. For instance, one that I'm sure we all can remember was Apple's credit card limit was had gender bias in it by giving men higher approval rates than their female counterparts, even if they had the same assets and liabilities. Now, how do we fix all of this? At BA, we kind of refer to it as a 3-step solution to reviewing bias and the models. You obviously have before the modeling, so that is scoping out what your machine learning model is actually built for. Do you have the input data? What does it look like? During the modeling, so are you seeing that the model's training and loss, as far as accuracy goes, looks appropriate? And then after modeling, looking at the model interact with the real world and real data and seeing if it is predicting accurately or at least equally for all counterparts and groups in the society. Also, through the model validation approach that we have, there is multiple steps to kind of determine from an independent view if a model is biased and then how to fix it. So step one is independent review. So we look at this model, we assess that there is bias just off of the data itself. Secondly, we get the context around a situation. So have conversations with the people that are close to it, who created it, and also the people that actually gathered the data as well. Thirdly, if there's any model modifications that need to go on, those are looked at specifically and targeted to be scoped out to address that bias. And then lastly, obviously process implementation for rectifying the model to eliminate as much bias as possible. And then these are some of the critical questions that we ask of our models beforehand of creating them, and you should too, as far as making sure that you're on par or aligned to have the most non-discriminatory and best performing model that you could possibly have. And some of those questions are, is your input data uniform? Does it need to be transformed in the sense of, is there certain groups that probably should be more represented, or certain features that should be looked at more closely when training your model? And then outside of that, with the model build, there is obviously, is the model predicting accurately every single group? Is the loss the same? Of course, is the model actually achieving its predetermined purpose? And is the model input data that it was trained on look exactly like the data that it is predicting on in the real world?
So, our recommendations to recap on how to look for bias in your own business. Firstly, recognize that bias can happen to any business, big or small. Secondly, be prepared to dig for that bias. It might not be easily seen within the organization. Then have the resource to audit your bias objectively or use an independent third party to review it. Look at your people, monitor who you recruit, reward and retain, and look to see whether your bias is reflected within the people that you have within the organization. Regularly review communications, data, imagery, and audiences, because that's where bias can start to creep into the way your execution when you're actually interacting with customers or people. And remember, developing your processes around bias and the models is a journey, not a destination. It is a journey, it will take time. Thank you.
Thank you.